with Director Wray to make sure we don't have similar instances. I think he's got a lot of explaining to do. And if Congress wants to call anybody up to the Hill, he should be one of the very first, followed by his friends Clapper and Brennan. And if they want to look at what really happened and what the failures of 2016 were, they need to look inside of the Obama administration, because that's where they took place.
White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders there pointing to what she says prompted the Mueller investigation earlier on this program. This as President Trump and several top Republican lawmakers suggest it is time to look into how this all began in the first place. So will congressional committees go down that road? We do not know. Let's bring in Texas Congressman John Ratcliffe, member of both the House Judiciary and Intelligence Committees. And good morning to you, sir. Perhaps you can answer that question for us. Is that what is next?
Good morning, Sandra and Bill. Good to be with you. Well, that is what's going to happen over in the Senate, where Republicans control the Judiciary Committee. Lindsey Graham has already indicated that. Jim Comey said yesterday that he had so many questions, and Lindsey Graham agreed with him, says, I do have questions for you, and we're going to bring you in to see that. In the House, unfortunately, it's Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler and Elijah Cummings that control the committees that should be looking into these issues. But instead, what they tell us they want to look at is the issue of collusion and obstruction that Bob Mueller just dispatched. So, why Bob Mueller, who had unlimited time, unlimited money, unlimited resources, 40 FBI agents working with 20 federal prosecutors, couldn't find any evidence of any crimes? What in the name of God's green earth makes anyone think that Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, and Elijah Cummings could find what Bob Mueller couldn't?
2,800 subpoenas, 500 search warrants, and on and on and on. I mean, it's a healthy list there. You and Trey Gowdy had a chance to talk to James Comey a year ago. What did you conclude then?
Well, we reached the same conclusion that Bill Barr and Rod Rosenstein announced yesterday. With respect to the issue of obstruction, it really wasn't a close call. We asked Jim Comey, how could President Trump have obstructed an investigation into collusion when he didn't know there was an investigation? You repeatedly told him there was no investigation. Why would he obstruct an investigation into collusion when, as Bob Mueller tells us, there was no collusion? This was not a close call. I think that the special counsel did do a disservice to the president and to the American people by saying, well, we're not going to charge the president with a crime, but we're not exonerating him. That's not the burden of proof. Donald Trump does not need to be exonerated. He has a presumption of innocence. If the government can meet its burden, it should charge him. They can't meet the burden. So no evidence of collusion, no evidence of obstruction, a complete win for the president.
Congressman, you had a chance to listen to the reaction pouring in last night, overnight, this morning. This is still sinking in. America's still digesting after, you mentioned, 2 years of this. The conclusion, how would you characterize the reaction that you've seen so far from your Democratic colleagues to this? Are they acknowledging what really has happened here in the outcome of this investigation?
No, it's disappointing. They're not. So many of them are saying it's not over. We don't care what Bob Mueller thinks. Now we're counting on the Southern District of New York to deliver us from the evil that is Donald Trump. Listen, stop wasting our time. We don't need to be investigating issues that Bob Mueller has now fully vetted and investigated and found no evidence of. Let's get on with dealing with a broken immigration system.
Sorry to interrupt you. My apologies here. Here's the Vice President, Mike Pence, who's going to comment on this. Stand by 1 second, John Ratcliffe.
All along, there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia during the 2016 election, and the Attorney General confirmed there was no obstruction of justice. Make no mistake about it, my fellow Americans, this was a total vindication of the President of the United States and our campaign. And it should be welcomed by every American. And even if some Democrats want to spend more time on discredited allegations, the American people can be confident. The President and I are going to continue to focus where we always have, on the issues that are most important to our country, on a stronger and more prosperous America, and on a safer world. And that's exactly what we've done since the first day of this administration.
Just wanted to bring our viewers those comments. We were given the speech about 5 minutes ago. So back to John Ratcliffe here quickly on this Inspector General report. I don't think a lot of people are really focused on at the moment here across the country. We'll see it in 2 or 3 months. The question they will try and solve is, how did this begin in the first place? What do you think they'll conclude?
Well, I had the chance to talk with Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, very recently to get an update in terms of timing. And you're right, he hopes to be done in May or June. He is looking at those issues. Remember, Bob Mueller said that there wasn't just insufficient evidence of collusion, there was no evidence of collusion. So where was the probable cause to begin this investigation? That's one of the things that the Inspector General is looking at, and more particularly to the issue of FISA abuse. A phony fake dossier paid for by the Democrats, falsely verified by the Department of Justice and the FBI, certified by Jim Comey. Why did that happen? How was that allowed to happen? And on the criminal side of that, John Huber, the U.S. Attorney in Utah, has been dispatched to look at the criminal aspects that may be associated with that. So between those investigations, American people will hopefully get answers to those questions much sooner than later.
Finally, Congressman, if we could just end on this. Kimberly Strassel's piece in the Journal, Mueller's done, now probe the real scandal. She talks about the searing indictment of the FBI as well as a reminder to know the story behind the Bureau's corrosive investigation. Where should this leave the American people with our system today, and how we were able to get here and see 2 years of this investigation with this result?
Well, you know, what's important is not the institution of the Department of Justice or the FBI's, it's the values that they stand for. And we need people to stand up for what those values are. Bill Barr's off to a great start. He is rejecting calls from the Democrats for him to violate the law and release the full report, to ignore classified information, grand jury information. He's just not going to do that. He's going to follow the law. People need to see the department follow the law, and that's the only way we're going to restore people's shaken faith and trust. And I think he's off to a great start in doing that. But the other part of it is hold people accountable for the breaches of trust, and that's this investigation into Comey, Lynch, McCabe, Strzok, Page. They need to be held accountable. The American people need to see this very unfortunate episode, the people that caused it held responsible for it.
Yeah. Did you see the James Comey tweet? Standing in a forest of redwoods, I do believe. And Lindsey Graham
a picture
said,
of himself, of course.
He said so many questions, and Lindsey Graham said, could not agree more. See you soon. When's that going to happen, sir? Final word.
Yeah, lots of questions. I hope Jim Comey has to answer all of those questions. I know Lindsey is eager to bring him in. I think we'll see that in the coming weeks.
He's going to be holding a press availability at the top of the hour. We'll hear from Lindsey Graham himself. So,
thank you, sir. John Ratcliffe with us today from Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman.
Great to be with both
Next
of you.
hour here, America's Newsroom, we'll go into all this more with former Republican, South Carolina Republican, Congressman, Chair of the House Oversight Committee, Trey Gowdy. He used to run the show in the House, so we'll talk to him about what is next on the Mueller matter coming up right here on America's Newsroom.
And a new Fox poll on the state of the 2020 race. Which candidate is in the lead? Who has the most traction? And who stacks up the best against President Trump?
Also, several candidates calling for the release of the entire Mueller report. We've heard from many already. Donna Brazile, former head of the DNC, will join us on that. Is that a winning strategy? And a lot more coming up shortly right here on America's Newsroom.
It is not often that I agree with Richard Nixon. But he was right to say that the American people have a right to know whether their president is a crook.
What's in the Mueller report? But what we know is that this president, when he was a candidate for the office, sought to collude with a foreign power that was trying to undermine our democracy, that once in power, he sought to obstruct the investigation. We've got to make sure that this is settled at the ballot box in November of 2020.
Top Democrats competing for the 2020 presidential nomination are demanding Attorney General William Barr release the entire Mueller report, with some candidates already making this a talking point with voters. Let's bring in Donna Brazile, former DNC chairwoman and a Fox News contributor. Donna, welcome to America's Newsroom. Welcome to Fox News.
Hey, good morning, and thank you. It's my first week on the job, Bill and Sandra.
Yes, that's right. You're doing well. That Beto O'Rourke comment aged very well, right? Apparently, he made that at about 35 minutes before the Barr summary was given to Capitol Hill. You heard that, right? This president, when he was a candidate, sought to collude with a foreign power, and now we know that is far from the truth. What about that?
Well, first of all, as you know, Bill and Sandra, I became chair of the Democratic Party as a result of the hack and the Russian hack, and that, of course, the special counsel stated, at least from the summary, that there was no involvement from the Trump campaign or Trump officials. For me personally, and I think for the American public, that's the best news, because the notion that any American, let alone the person running for president, colluded with or worked with the Russians to interfere in our elections, that bothered me for many, many years. And now that we can put that aside, I think it's important to try to remove all of the other clouds over our democracy. We've had clouds. When a foreign government attacks you, I think the only way to dissipate the clouds that we still see is to have more of the report released. We recognize that the Attorney General must consult with the special counsel to ensure that the grand jury information and perhaps classified information is not leaked or potentially put in this report. But I do believe that the best disinfectant is sunshine, and that we should see as much of the report as soon as possible.
Well, Donna, I think that we've heard a lot of those calls this morning in the wake of this report being released to see it in its entirety. William Barr has promised throughout this process and during his confirmation process that he would, to the fullest extent of his ability under the constraints of the law, release it in its entirety. Don't you take him at his word for that?
Let me just say this. I read that and I've heard that, but as you know, talk is talk, and you gotta do more than just talk. I think the American people deserve to see everything. As you know, Congress passed, in the House at least, 420-0. And that's Democrats and Republicans,
right,
for this report to be released. So let's release it as soon as possible. This is a summary.
Donna,
this is a summary.
I don't think there's a lot of debate over that just yet. I mean, you have to protect sources and methods, and there's grand jury testimony in there. You redact and get it out. Don't you find it an alarming lack of curiosity by many on how this whole thing started in the first place? The dirty dossier, the meetings between James Comey and Donald Trump in January when he was president-elect to let him know, hey, we've got this dirt on you, dirt that turned out to be an entire fabrication. There's a remarking lack of curiosity to know where all this came from. Doesn't that strike you as a bit odd?
Well, Bill, as somebody who has suffered some of the wounds from the cyber attack, I'm not going to get into the pity party of thinking about just the internal works of the FBI and the counterintelligence. Of course I'm concerned. Of course I want to know as an American. But I also want to make sure that the American public understand what cyber crimes are, what cyber attacks mean to our democracy. So I think we could do both. We can continue to proceed as if this investigation is over with, but we still have to evaluate it so that we can protect our country. And at the same time, if individuals did anything wrong, we need to know. You know, I personally had to go before the Senate Intelligence Committee. I had to speak to and address some of those issues. But the Barr summary told us in the Mueller report, we've already got that information. They said that Russia tried to interfere repeatedly and no one took the bait. Why is that not good enough for Democrats? Because I want to know, if you didn't take the bait, did you report it to the FBI? Okay? If somebody comes to me from a foreign country, actually I've had everyone, and say, I have dirt on, or I would like to do something that is not in the interest of my country, did you report it? You know, when I was Al Gore's campaign manager, they sent the debate book over to us, the George W. Bush debate book. And you know what one individual did report it, and then he took himself out of the debate process. So did you report it? So look, let's look at the report. We're making conclusions without reading. And by the way, I love to read between the lines. There's nothing to color in it, but I want to see the full report as much as can be redacted without taking away the essence of what was found out. We just need to protect our country, boo. We got to protect our country.
All right, Donna Brazil, appreciate you coming on the program. Come back soon.
Will do.
Thank you.
At the moment, we're waiting to hear from the Senate Judiciary Chair for the first time since the AG shared that summary of the Mueller matter. Lindsey Graham saying the cloud